Welcome to A Wayfinder's Guide to Life, a podcast for entrepreneurs and leaders who've checked all the boxes and still feel something deeper calling. This is a space for stories, soul, and walking the wild path home. I'm Mike Brcic, adventurer, entrepreneur, and founder of Wayfinders. Pack light, walk slow, we're heading into the unknown. Welcome to episode 2. If you're just tuning in for the first time, this is season 1, and we're walking through the 10 stages of what I call the Wayfinder's journey, a modern retelling of the hero's and heroine's journey through the lens of the midlife entrepreneur and leader. Last week we talked about the call, that subtle, persistent ache that starts to emerge when the life you've built begins to feel too small for the person you're becoming. And if you missed that episode, I recommend going back and giving it a listen. But if you're here now, welcome. Because today we talk about what happens next. What happens when you hear the call and then immediately pretend you didn't? This is the resistance. It's when your old life begins to unravel, when you sense that something is out of alignment, and you try desperately to keep the pieces together and pretend this isn't happening. When Obi-Wan first invites Luke to leave behind the dust and duty of Tatooine and come with him to Alderaan to begin training in the ways of the Force, what does Luke do? He immediately says no. "I can't get involved," he tells Obi-Wan. "I've got work to do. It's not that I like the Empire. I hate it. But there's nothing I can do about it right now." That moment captures something so deeply human. That first response when the soul knocks. When the invitation comes to leave the known, the comfortable, the carefully constructed life. And something inside us says, "Not yet. Not me. Not now." This is what the resistance is really about. Not laziness, not apathy, but a kind of sacred hesitation. A very reasonable clinging to the safety of the known. Luke wasn't ready. At least that's what he believed. And yet, as is so often the case, the call comes again, louder. In Luke's story, it arrives as loss and grief. The death of his aunt and uncle severs his ties to the old life. And suddenly, there's nothing left to hold him back. He crosses the threshold, and everything begins to change. If you've resisted your own call, if you've hesitated, rationalized, postponed, it doesn't disqualify you. It initiates you. Resistance is part of the path. It's what tempers the blade before it's drawn. The call will come again, and next time it will be louder. If the call feels like an invitation, resistance feels like a wall. A wall made of busyness and logic and productivity and rationalization. It sounds like now's not the right time. Maybe after this quarter. I just need to get through this launch. Or this. My marriage is fine. It sounds reasonable, strategic even. But it's not strategy. It's fear, wearing a very convincing costume. I know the resistance well, and I've seen it in countless others. Leaders, visionaries, high performers. People who are so good at responding to external expectations, they forget how to respond to their own internal knowing. The resistance comes after the whisper, and it's often where we spend years. Not because we're weak, but because we're afraid of what answering the call might cost us. The call might ask you to tell the truth, to say no, to rest, to change something that makes you look successful, but feel empty. And so we delay. We keep performing the version of our lives that others seem to admire. We keep doing what we're good at, even if it's quietly killing us. We numb. We overachieve. We make ourselves very busy. Because stillness might reveal too much. And if none of that works, we say yes to things we don't really want. A false yes. A project. A partnership. A plan. Just so we can say we're moving forward, when really, we're just trying to avoid standing still long enough to feel what's true. Hey, quick pause for something important. If you're enjoying this conversation, if something in the show is resonating, I'd love to ask a small favor. Go ahead and hit pause and make sure you're following or subscribed to the show. That way you won't miss some amazing upcoming episodes. Go ahead, I'll wait. Welcome back. If you're feeling generous, leaving a quick rating or review would mean the world. I know everyone asks for that, but here's why it matters. This podcast is for people standing at the same threshold you may be standing at now. And ratings and reviews are how the algorithm gods decide who gets to find it. They help this show reach others quietly asking the same questions, quietly aching for the same shift. So if this space has offered something meaningful to you, help it find the next soul who needs it. Thanks in advance if you leave a review. All right, back to the episode. I've been there. I've said yes to the safe thing, the strategic thing. The thing I knew wasn't right, but it bought me time. In the last episode, I told you about the first time I heard the call with my previous business. It was 2013. Sacred Rides, my mountain bike tour company, was thriving. We were expanding globally, winning awards, and riding a wave of 40% year-over-year growth. You have such a cool business, people would say. Outwardly, they were right. Inwardly, I was drifting. The business that the 25-year-old me had poured his heart into no longer fit the man I had become at 42, or the man I was longing to become. The call had come, loud and clear. So what did I do? Instead of acknowledging that I had outgrown the business, instead of listening to the deeper truth rising inside me, I doubled down and went in the opposite direction. I told myself we just weren't growing fast enough, even though the growth we had was already stretching me thin, straining my marriage, eroding my joy. Still, I pushed on, raised money, took on debt, poured gasoline on a fire I no longer wanted to tend. The business grew. It kept biggering and biggering. And so did my misery. So did the misalignment. Expenses ballooned. Cash flow tightened. We were growing, but at the cost of my soul. By 2018, I was burnt out, hollowed. In 2019, I sold the company for a fraction of what it was once worth. I was lucky to walk away with anything. Could have all collapsed. My resistance to the call cost me 5 years of pain, 5 years of soul-splitting tension, and it cost my investors too. This is what happens when we choose comfort over courage, when we resist the call that's trying to save us, when we cling to the known instead of stepping into the truth. I know I'm not alone in this. There's something universal about resisting the very thing that's trying to heal us. I've seen it in others. I've seen it in myself. And I've seen it in old stories that echo through distant mountains. The remote kingdom of Bhutan is one of those places where the ancient and the sacred feel alive. I've been 3 times, drawn not just by the beauty of the Himalayas, but by something quieter. I've spent days with the monks there, at cliffside monasteries, learning not just about Buddhism, but about the deeper currents that shape a life, and the value of stillness and silence. One story they told me still lingers. It's the story of Milarepa. He wasn't always a saint. In fact, his early life was marked by pain, vengeance, and the dark arts. He used sorcery to destroy those who had wronged his family. In the wake of that destruction, he was left hollow. The first whisper of the call came in that remorse. But he didn't run toward redemption. Milarepa resisted. He doubted. He wandered. The path of awakening didn't arrive on a golden cushion. It came wrapped in hardship, in years of humiliation, of being broken down by his teacher, of sitting in mountain caves wrapped in nothing but a cotton cloth, drinking nettle soup, growing sick and skeletal and nearly dying. Many times he thought of leaving, and still he stayed. Not because he didn't resist, but because he finally surrendered. And in that surrender, he became one of Tibet's most beloved saints, a man whose songs of realization still ripple through the Himalayas. We like to romanticize transformation. We imagine the courageous leap, the breakthrough, the reinvention. But in truth, most of us resist the call at first. Like Luke, like Milarepa, like me. Sometimes the soul calls us through longing, sometimes through loss, and sometimes it just waits, quietly, patiently, until we're finally ready to listen. So how do you know if you're in the resistance? You probably won't feel afraid, not obviously at least. Instead, it'll sound like logic, responsibility, maturity. But here's how resistance often hides. You say, "I'm fine," when you're slowly going numb. You say, "It's not the right time," when your soul is begging for change. You keep checking boxes that no longer belong to you because they're familiar. You keep chasing success when what you actually crave is harmony. Resistance rarely looks like struggle. It often looks like competence, like confidence, like high-functioning pain. Here's what to look for. You're endlessly busy, but never deeply fulfilled. You keep saying yes to things that feel just a little off. You stay in roles, routines, or relationships that no longer feel alive because the unknown feels too risky. This is the sacred work of midlife. To stop performing and start listening. To stop defaulting and start discerning. Your soul isn't interested in whether something looks good on paper. It's only interested in whether it's true. But what about my responsibilities? I hear you say. I have a mortgage to pay, children to feed. I'm not asking you to abandon your responsibilities, to go sit in a cave in Tibet, audition for America's Got Talent, or live in a camper van. I'm asking you not to abandon yourself in the name of responsibility. I'm asking you to pay attention to your inner experience, your longings, your soul's call to just be a little more free. In her book Untamed, the writer Glennon Doyle writes, "I will not stay, not ever again, in a room or conversation or relationship or institution that requires me to abandon myself." If this is stirring something in you, that's a good thing. It means you're ready to stop resisting. If it's pissing you off, that anger is pointing you somewhere useful. Explore it. Anger is such a useful emotion. So here's your invitation this week. First, I have 3 journal prompts for you. Write these down and sit with them. Then choose one and see where the pen takes you. Where are you choosing safety over truth? Which truth is inconvenient but undeniable? What would you do if you didn't have to succeed? And here's a simple but powerful practice. Write a letter from your future self to the version of you who said yes. Tell yourself what you walked toward, what you let go of. Let yourself imagine who you became when you stopped resisting and started trusting. You'll find all of these listed in the show notes. Next week, we cross the threshold. We'll explore what it means to finally say yes. Not because the path is clear, but because the cost of staying stuck is just too high. That episode is called The Threshold. It's where the real journey begins. I'm Mike Brcic. Thanks for walking with me. Thanks for walking a while with me today. If this conversation stirred something in you, I'd be honored if you take a moment to leave a review in your podcast platform. Reviews are how this podcast finds its way to others who might be standing at the same threshold, wondering if there's more waiting for them too. And they're a great way to make a deposit into your karmic bank account. If and when you're ready to go deeper, here are 3 ways. You can join one of my upcoming adventures with Wayfinders, where I gather entrepreneurs and leaders in midlife in some of the wildest and most beautiful places around the world to reconnect with self, with soul, and with each other. This coming October, I'm heading back to the wilds of Mongolia. In March of 2026, we'll explore the deserts of the Sinai Peninsula with the Bedouins, and in October of 2026, I'm going back to the magical Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan. You can learn more at way-finders.com. If you're a fan of the written word, you can also subscribe to my Substack newsletter for weekly stories, reflections, and invitations into the quiet, meaningful corners of life. Finally, if you'd like to connect live with other soulful entrepreneurs, join our next online Soul Talks, a monthly conversation space for people walking this road with heart. You'll find all of these linked in the show notes. Until next time, may you walk gently, listen deeply, and trust the wild places within.